The floor is yours. Colleagues, I'm very glad to be at the territory of Minsk once again. I love speaking to the youth, to the future of our homeland, and the future that is already present at the battlefields of the special military operation, among other locations. And I appreciate this chance to talk to the lads who come from there. And a couple of weeks ago, I gave certificates to the graduates of the special educational program, and 19 alumni were veterans of the special military operation. So I spoke to these alumni, to the graduates. And also I was in the program of the Time of the Heroes that was initiated by our president, and I can see that our young people understand how important the foreign policy in the development of our country in modern times, our foreign policy, the policy of Russia after the Soviet Union collapse. So our foreign policy has always been based on the national interests. So we weren't trying to be some kind of mantras or trying to impose any approaches or ideologies to our neighbors or our partners. So in our documents, in our constitution, our foreign policy, it clearly states that the main goal of our foreign policy activity is ensuring safe conditions for the development of the country and enhancing the well-being and welfare of our citizens. And now, when they start saying in earnest, many political analysts, experts, scientists, that World War III is, well, has already begun in this new shape, starting with the aggression that the West unleashed against Yugoslavia back in 1999. Then there was aggression against Iraq, then destruction of Libya, an attack against Syria. All these Middle Eastern countries are currently in a pretty stirred up state because their territorial integrity that the West is so worried about when they speak about Ukraine. So they didn't. It was undermined in the case of Syria, Libya, and Iraq in 2011 during the so-called Arab Spring. It happened to these countries, and these countries are still dismantled in a way. And now the West shifted its focus on the next neighboring region, the Gaza Strip, the Palestinian territories. There was an aggression against the Islamic Republic of Iran. In Europe, we all know about the Ukrainian issue, which is, of course, a manifestation of the West's policy to inflict a strategic defeat against Russia. As they put it, they do not conceal it. They publicly state that they've been preparing for this for some time, for quite a while, and they are not ashamed of saying that the Minsk Accords that were designed to put an end to all the issues, to all the problems. And President Putin and his interlocutors, Chancellor Merkel, President Hollande, President Poroshenko, he spent 17 hours without any pauses, without any rest to draft these agreements. And now then they are saying that we didn't want to implement it. We needed to gain time for Ukraine to prepare Ukraine for the future war against Russia, to flood it with weapons. And now these people are demanding from us to stop hostilities immediately, to leave everything as it is, to give some respite to Kyiv and to continue flooding them with weapons. And the fact that Europeans want to inflict a defeat on us, it is reaffirmed every day. The new Chancellor of Germany, Merz, he said, I don't know if he understands what he's saying. He said that we must make Germany the biggest military power in Europe again. It was the biggest major military power before World War I that they started, and before World War II that they also started, and now he wants to turn Germany again into the biggest military power in Europe. And his defense minister, Pistorius, said that if it comes to this, then the Germans will kill Russian soldiers without any doubt. Among the European elites, it is perceived as something that they just take for granted. And first of all, it reflects the West's inability to be one of the major regions, strong regions in the multipolar world. It cannot renounce its hegemony that they have been enjoying for half a millennium, and especially clearly it is seen in Europe when they want to subjugate everything and everyone, and they don't want to take into consideration the pragmatic considerations. Literally yesterday, I believe it was, President Trump had a meeting with the head of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, and then she proudly said that they have reached an agreement in accordance with which European commodities will be exported to the U.S. under 15% of tariffs. And the United States will export their commodities, their goods to Europe with zero tariffs. In addition to that, $750 billion Europe will spend on receiving American energy, first of all, liquefied natural gas and nuclear power. And they will refuse to buy any Russian energy whatsoever. And $600 billion more, as Trump declared, they will receive investments from Europe. So clearly, American energy will be significantly more expensive than the Russian one. And it is clear that this approach will lead to further deindustrialization of Europe. And the investment will now flow from Europe to the United States, so they will be shifted to the United States, and it will be a strong blow on the energy prices. And for the European industries, European agriculture, it will be a heavy blow. But these European politicians, including von der Leyen, saying that they are proud, they are bragging about this. Yes, we will spend more money. Yes, we will probably less capabilities to resolve our social issues, but we must enhance these supplies. If we remember the previous administration of the United States, and if we remember President Biden, Brazilian President Lula mentioned that in their private conversation, he mentioned that he wanted to destroy Russia. Biden wanted to destroy Russia, so it was a war to destroy Russia. The stance of President Trump is different. So he is acting based on common sense, first of all. He's thinking about business considerations, so what's more profitable for the United States, that these are the steps they're taking, and we can see it from his trade activities. So now they have reached this agreement with Europe. Of course, it is damaging for Europe. So I don't even have to comment on that. But President Trump is very pragmatic. He doesn't want any wars. And unlike his predecessor, unlike President Biden, and unlike the current European elites, likes of Ursula von der Leyen, Starmer's, Macron's, he's open for dialogue. Always, even during the Cold War years, the dialogue was maintained, and it allowed the conflicting camps to better understand each other, to stop the war from happening. And Europe has lost this instinct, and we can see resurging the same forces in Europe that wanted to destroy Russia. And they chose as their battering ram Ukraine. They welcomed, they greeted everything that Ukraine did, and the European Commissar on Expansion, Madam Kurz, if I'm not mistaken, it happened a month ago. She said that Ukraine fulfilled all the necessary conditions to start the negotiations on being acceded to the European Union. Has anyone heard any statements from Europe, any criticism from Europe regarding the Ukraine's approach towards human rights, language, education, media, culture, legislation? Their laws forbid Russian language in all these areas, and they have adopted these decrees long before the special military operation. Europe is saying that Ukraine is fighting for the European values. Macron said that unlike Russia, Ukraine is fighting for our interests, for our European values. So they admit that all of them are Nazis, because Nazism in Ukraine is brought back with the decrees that they adopt to ensure that they can glorify Bandera and Shuhevich, who were in the same ranks with Hitler and other war criminals, and now they have become freedom symbols. And we have always stood for a dialogue, even during the most difficult of times. And during the Cold War period, we have never interrupted this dialogue between the Soviet Union and the United States. And another important thing that I want to mention today is that during Cold War there was mutual respect, and there is none of it now. Europe is deranged, basically. Of course, they fight for preserving the power. They understand that hundreds of billions of euro that they invested in Ukraine to make sure that Ukraine killed our soldiers, launched terrorist attacks against civilian infrastructure in Russia, sent assassins to kill our politicians and journalists. So Europe is doing all of that with the only goal in mind to use Ukrainians as cannon fodder to remove Russia as their competitor, or to provoke this trends in Russia that they also have in mind, despite all the measures that they have taken, that our government has taken to stop the activities of all the non-governmental organizations that were promoting not the values of communication, of building bridges between the youth population of our country. So they were promoting only the Western agenda. But the dialogue that we maintain with Trump's administration shows that they are still sensible people in the West, and they enjoy serious support, as it was shown by the developments inside the United States. We are open for the dialogue. President Putin has said that on many occasions. We are open for dialogue with any country, including European countries. President Macron gave a phone call to our president. Our president responded. I don't want to reveal any secrets of what they spoke about, but it did not yield a lot of positive outcomes, because later President Macron made public statements that we need to pressure Russia into agreeing to unconditional ceasefire immediately. He's been saying that for a lot of time, because he was asked, will you stop supplying weapons to Ukraine if this happens? He said, no, ceasefire must be unconditional.
So this is what we can say about their goals. And the Minsk Agreements also had a certain goal in mind. They just wanted a respite, just like now. So I would have said that the West cannot just accept its loss of hegemony and is trying to persevere in its neocolonial policies, trying to counter its competition by hindering their development. Because the new centers of power have already overtaken the old leaders, and if the barriers are removed, they will far outpace the West. The West is still strong in terms of military power, technologies, biotechnologies, and cyberspace. But the West cannot be just a key player. They always aspire to be the top predator. But this is now an objective process. Nobody can stop it. Whatever sanctions or tariff wars they provoke, they're now trying to provoke actual wars. After seeing what they did in the Middle East and in Ukraine and Iran, the West is now planning an operation in the South China Sea, in the Taiwan Strait, the East China Sea, and in Southeast Asia in general, including the Korean Peninsula. All of that seems to be part of a pattern of the West clinging to power, clinging to its position as a hegemon. So the multipolar world is certainly countering this attempt to stop the march of history. We have many partners and like-minded countries. We have many allies. And the closest ones are, of course, in Belarus. And also the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. We are connected by decades of brotherly ties. We helped our Korean neighbors secure independence, and they helped us liberate the Kursk region from Ukrainian neo-Nazis. India is yet another great country. India, China, Russia, Turkey, Iran, all of these countries represent great civilizations, centuries old, civilizations which managed to preserve their unity as monolithic entities. Other continents do not seem to have this, but we do have this in the Eurasian continent. These great civilizations are now the core actors shaping the multipolar world. Now, in practice, these trends are also shaped by the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, by BRICS, our partners at the African Union, at CELAC, and certainly this sort of interest that many countries are showing. We're seeing dozens of countries show avid interest in cooperating with the SCO, BRICS, and the UN. This momentum is now growing, and it will continue supporting a new sustainable mechanisms aiding the development of the global majority. The West is exploiting the IMF and the World Bank, the mechanism established after the Second World War, to abuse its position of power and its position as the proprietor of the reserve currencies, trampling down on its principles of presumption of innocence and private property. The global majority, on the other hand, like BRICS, the SCO and others, are establishing alternative platforms for bank settlements, for organizing logistics, mechanisms that are not dependent on Western rules, on the system that was established after World War II and that has since been abused. And the West is now seeing that the mechanisms under their control are seeing decreased participation from various countries, and they're not happy with it either. And our closest allies and strategic partners from the Collective Security Treaty Organization, from the Commonwealth of Independent States, and from the Eurasian Economic Union are all major entities taking active part in creating what is called the Greater Eurasian Partnership, the post-Soviet associations, the SCO, ASEAN, and other promising players. Eurasia is the only continent that does not have a uniting continental association. Africa does have one. They have many regional integration structures, but they also have a global one. Latin America also have many sub-regional organizations, but they also have CELAC. But Eurasia does not yet have such an organization. Several years ago, the Russian president spoke at the Russia-ASEAN summit and proposed that we support these sub-regional processes to help them complement each other, so that their programs help remove duplication of efforts, and that the Greater Eurasian Partnership can arise from a combination of these efforts as a natural process, not as a top-down initiative. It would just be a natural process that would result from a desire to maximize benefits and to make the best use of available resources. Speaking more broadly, it would become a firm foundation, a material foundation for shaping a Eurasian security architecture. The entities in charge of security right now are, first of all, what was created in Europe after the war, the OSCE, NATO, but both of these entities are premised on the concept of Euro-Atlantic security. So it requires participation from our colleagues from beyond the Atlantic. Well, of course, there's nothing bad in cooperating with the US or with Canada, but why cannot we have a continental system that would be open for everyone on the continent? Especially since we're seeing that President Trump does not have a particular desire to maintain a role in Europe, preferring to deal with America's own problems, with the security, economic development, dictating conditions to others, like to Ursula von der Leyen, like they did recently. Now, in Minsk in October, there will be a third Eurasian Security Conference that will deliberate the Charter of Diversity and Multipolarity in the 21st Century, drafted by our Belarusian friends. And we were also involved. And there was a lot of participation during the first two conferences, including from some European Union countries. And I think the number of such countries will only increase. So we have a lot of things to do. First, of course, we must ensure a victory. Now, it's the first time when Russia is fighting against the West on its own. We had allies during World War I and II, but now we don't have any allies on the battlefield, so we have to rely on ourselves. We must not show any sign of weakness, and the President has outlined our goals on the international arena and on the battlefield, and those goals will certainly be achieved. We insist on what is our legitimate right, meaning our security. No NATO membership for Ukraine, no NATO expansion, which has happened despite all of the documents and pledges made, expanding right to our borders. They said Russia should go back to borders of 1991. Well, first of all, If we take 1991, when Ukraine was recognized as an independent state, it has, as its main principle, its Declaration of Independence, which stipulated a non-bloc, non-nuclear status and neutrality. It was in that quality that it was recognized as independent. But when they started destroying everything Russian, we could not just stand aside. We tried to resolve this through talks, but we failed. So there were no alternatives to the special military operation. And it's not the territories that matter to us. Sometimes I hear people saying that we captured the territories, but we don't need additional territory. We're the largest country in the world. We just need that the people who had lived there for centuries, people with Russian language, Russian culture, who want to have education in their native tongue, who want to raise their children in their culture and to have their rights protected, would live in peace. That's a legitimate demand. And of course, the realities that are recognized in our constitution are not up for negotiation. So we have many things on our table, and I believe that the meetings we have here and that you have with my colleagues will help you understand what our foreign policy arm does, what we do for the Russian Federation, and we hope that the ranks of diplomats will see additional participation from young people like you. So what is the name of the forum? Well, yes, that's right. And I think we can start the questions and answers. Thank you, Minister Lavrov. Please take a seat. Thank you for your appreciation. We're very happy that you are a regular guest here. Today we'll have an open dialogue, and everyone has a lot of questions. And I'll be a moderator, and I'll use my power as moderator to ask my own question. We actually started this conversation in 2018. You said that multipolarity is a positive trend that brings more democracy and fairness. The world has changed a lot over these 7 years. Do you agree with yourself, with what you said 7 years ago? And would you perhaps make any adjustments to that statement?
Well, of course I would agree with what I said back then. Not because I'm so egocentric, but because multipolar world has been shaping even more actively since 2018, and it carries democracy, puts democracy into the international relations, as opposed to the diktat and hegemony that the West wants to preserve. And there is a lot of resistance towards multipolarity. But, as you know from physics, the bigger the resistance, the more stable the movement is. That's what's happening today. President Trump recently, well, in his manner, he commented on the BRICS activities, and he said BRICS is some strange entity and they want to use alternative currency, and he will not allow anyone to ignore the dollar. But back during his presidential campaign, he started speaking about dollar, and he said that Biden and his administration were the ones who inflicted the biggest damage to the U.S. interest because they undermined the dollar as a currency that everyone relied upon, and dollar will continue to weaken. He recognized that. He admitted that. Now he wants to put an end to this process via threats and blackmail. Well, if we speak from the standpoint of business, it makes sense because it's important for the financial situation in the United States because it largely relies on the role of dollar. I remember many years ago when we discussed the matters of the International Monetary Cooperation, I don't know who was president back then, but the American administration said, friends, dollar is not American property. It belongs to all mankind. So it's a lubricant that the global economy requires to make it work uninterruptedly under any weather conditions. But the world is changing, and yet another impetus for the multipolarity is the fact that old system does not reflect the interests of the global majority anymore. And it all started with when, after World War II, the International Monetary Fund and World Bank were established, and the World Trade Organization as well. Because the rules that they set for the global economy, so everyone was happy with that. Well, some were happy with that, the rest understood that there are no other rules and they need to stay to adopt these rules. China also agreed to these rules, and then those rules that were invented by the Americans, and China managed to beat Americans on their playing field. Why are they so worried? Because China, within the current international monetary system, even if not all the rules were followed, still China managed to become a leader in the global economy and in many other areas, and this gap will continue to grow. This is exactly why they are trying to hinder the reforms inside the International Monetary Fund. If we look at the economic weight of the BRICS countries, it should have become an entity with more votes, and then Americans would not have any veto vote, but they artificially hinder this development that allows them to put a veto on any decisions. The same is happening in the World Trade Organization. Americans blocked the activities of the entity within this organization that resolve various disputes, and they stop any quorum from happening inside this dispute chamber, and it doesn't function anymore. So you can try to hinder it, to put in some obstacles on its path, but you cannot stop it completely, because the trend is evident, it is clear, and it will happen. Thank you, Minister Lavrov. Friends, we have a chance to ask our questions. I suggest we start on my left-hand side. We have a volunteer, a young man. Please introduce yourself. And what is your question? My name is Danil. I'm from Ufa, from the Republic of Bashkortostan. What are the global security crises do you see in the next 10 years? Well, I already spoke about this during my remarks. Well, we are not speaking about threats anymore, about actual security issues, and they have been existing around Ukraine, obviously, and we are now fighting for our national interests, for our security, and we will accomplish what we need. Middle East, Palestine, Iran, the situation in Syria and Libya is not over, Iraq as well, and the West, first of all, Americans, they do not even hide this fact, that they are very much interested in expanding their military influence to the Asian-Pacific region, that they are calling Indo-Pacific region, to drag our Indian friends into this cooperation, to make it feel nice for them. But all these Indo-Pacific strategies are aimed at withholding China, destroying Russia, and to undermine the activities of organizations around ASEAN, and to bring the NATO military infrastructure to the Far East, to the South China Sea, to the Taiwan Strait, to the Korean Peninsula, and they are establishing tripartite organization or quartets. So the US, Japan, and South Korea organization, they are planning bigger and bigger military exercises around the Korean Peninsula. And when there are American, South Korean exercises, they already use an element of nuclear weapons, which is very concerning, especially against the backdrop of the situation when that another organization where Australia is a member of, they're also now moving nuclear technology to their cooperation in regards of constructing, manufacturing submarines. And now the issue is the proliferation of the nuclear weapons. So we can see a lot of concerning issues that are emerging, and the fact that NATO is coming here more and more actively, so they want to establish some kind of representation office in Japan now. And when the former Secretary General of NATO was asked, Mr. Stoltenberg, when he was asked, he is not NATO anymore, but he was asked during a press conference, a journalist asked him, well, NATO is a North Atlantic Treaty Organization. When it was established and when it was operating, it was always described as an organization that was defensive in its nature, and its main goal is protecting the territories of its member states. And now you want to go to the east, you want to shift your focus to the east, outside the borders of your organization. He said, without even blinking an eye, he said that, yes, the only goal for us is protecting the territories of our member states. But under the current conditions, the threats to these territories is coming from that region, from the South China Sea and so on. So it's a very telling statement that reflects the evolution of their mentality, and it evolves towards looking for an excuse to preserve NATO. And they're looking for excuses, for justifications why NATO should survive. So there are a lot of threats, and it is going to be a difficult decade. I can help but notice this poster that says, I have a question. Don't forget to introduce yourself. Good afternoon. I can't believe that's happening, actually. My name is Dasha. I'm from Volgograd. And I'm an aspiring translator, and I attend the Volgograd State University. And so I would like to ask my question to make the conditions more familiar to us, asking the question in French. Yes, sure, we can take a photo, but out of respect for the audience, please repeat it in Russian, because not everyone is fluent in French. Yes, your French is splendid, but not everyone here speaks French. Friends, good afternoon to everyone. I have asked Mr. Lavrov to shake his hand and to take a picture together, because this is my dream, and this is a dream of my grandma's, and she told me not to go back home without taking a picture with Minister Lavrov. Unfortunately, I didn't meet your grandma when I was younger. Well, if colleagues would allow you, not now, not at the moment, but later, when we're done with this session. I believe Grandma can be proud now because you're here at the territory of Minsk, and she can watch you, and you showed your French skills splendidly, brilliantly. Now let's move on to the actual questions. I can see a young lady with your phone. Please introduce yourself too. Minister Lavrov, good afternoon. My name is Milana. I am attending Moscow State University, the philology department. I've got a question for you. What programs are most efficient to promote Russian values, Russian traditions abroad? Thank you. As for our preferences, it was always to be part of the, versatile programs, sport programs or cultural programs. But when the discrimination started, unfortunately, I can't even find a decent word to describe it. Discrimination against our athletes, against our culture. Recently in Italy, they cancelled a tour by Valery Gergiev with the soloists of the Mariinsky Theater. Italy, that was a cradle of culture. And now it has also fell under this influence of neo-Nazis. I can put it this way, Ukrainian neo-Nazis, and in the Italian leadership there are also people. So, for example, at the UN, just like Germany, they vote against the resolution about inadmissibility of glorification of Nazism. Germany does that, Italy does that, Japan does that as well. But under these conditions, we are trying to stand for the need to go back to the roots. If we speak about international Olympic movement, to go back to the principles of developing cultural, scientific, educational ties that are enshrined in the UNESCO founding charter, and they are being violated, blatantly violated now. And in Georgia, our fencers are winning gold medals or other prizes. It's a sign of situation becoming healthier. If we speak in regards of the international sports, but at the same time, we are trying to develop alternative platforms as well. Last year, we held BRICS games, and of course, our invention is the games of the future, so-called phygital games. So it's physical plus digital. It's a mixture. So one team plays, let's say, basketball, and then these guys play video game, basketball video game. It is going to be an annual event from now on, and we weren't really insulted by the fact that we were not allowed to participate in the Eurovision Song Contest that has been turned into a promotion campaign for non-traditional values that are alien to us. And this year in the Moscow region, at the Live Arena, we are going to hold the first Intervision Song Contest. And it's going to be an international context where BRICS countries will participate.
I think it is 20 plus BRICS countries that have already confirmed participation, BRICS countries and their partners. So we never close ourselves down for cooperation. But when we are facing barriers to equal participation, we will certainly do something to counter that. But here, just as with the other sanctions, we're seeing a desire on the part of the West to suppress their competition in trade, in the energy markets, in sports, and in art. They're obsessed with preserving their leading position, and it's something we see in every detail. But we are creating a framework that will ensure the development of our sports and our arts in every aspect. Thank you, Minister Lavrov. Now, we don't have much time, but I see that we still have many questions. But could you please keep it short, if you could? I think it relates to me. Oh, no, we would be happy to hear more from you. Now, I think we have a question here. Good afternoon, colleagues, Minister Lavrov. My name is Alexei Kudryavtsev, the LDPR Youth Party fraction. Now, what is the difference between globalization and preserving national sovereignty? Do you mean the difference or the... Yeah, I mean, how can you stay on one side and not the other? Well, I think a multipolar world can only be possible if every country maintains their sovereignty and helps others do the same. And I don't see any contradiction. Take BRICS, for example. And not a single BRICS country had to yield any of its sovereignty, and all the decisions are made by consensus. A consensus is harder to reach than making a simple vote, like what they're trying to do in the EU, where they don't agree with Hungary or Slovakia, who don't like the decisions by Eurocrats, who were not elected by anyone. And so the European Commission has now invented the so-called qualified majority, and so that they can have a vote, and those who want to stand by their national interests will have to accept a decision forced on them. This will never happen at the CIS or CSTO or any other association which we're a part of. So I believe that you must preserve self-respect and ensure the respect of your sovereignty by your partners. It is a factor that cements the very fabric of a multipolar world. Thank you, Minister Lavrov. Now let's go here to the left part of the audience. Yes, I'm sorry, I mean the one to the side, yes, please. Minister Lavrov, I studied at the People's Friendship University. During the Znanie series of events, we heard one of the speakers tell us a story about pressure that our sports is facing, and we heard that Hungary is engaged in diplomacy, in sports diplomacy, establishing ties through various kinds of sports between countries. Do we plan to have anything like that? Do you mean under the Ministry of Sports? No, under the Foreign Ministry. Well, the Foreign Ministry does have a department headed by a special envoy and ambassador at large. And I think it's necessary that the Ministry of Sports, which has a significant network of international ties, and especially since our current minister has a taste for international contacts, I think they should be coordinating with us, and this could really be a promising area. Thank you. Now, I will get back to you. First, let's go over here. The girl in black. You've held up your hand for a long time. Here. My name is Daria. I studied the Higher School of Economics, and I am also a member of the LDPR as a youth organization. Now, my question is, what motivated you throughout your career at the Foreign Ministry and before that? And what is your advice to young people who want to be a diplomat today? Well, you must enter the MGIMO University. Yes, that's the only thing we'd need. Well, of course, we also have people from other education institutions. Every year we have people who come in from St. Petersburg University and the Far Eastern Federal University and from the Higher School of Economics as well. But the lion's share is, of course, MGIMO graduates, because they have specific programs tailored to the ministry's needs. And when you apply for a job at the ministry, you have certain tests, and of course this helps. And as to my motivation, I've already mentioned, and it's not a big secret, when I graduated from school, I had a silver medal. They asked me to retake the biology exam for a better grade, and then I was eligible for a silver medal. And I had a very good teacher in charge of our class who taught physics and mathematics. He went on hikes and made various trips to distant regions during vacation breaks, and he was a charismatic person, and it was his influence that really made me to aspire to enter the MEFI University. And my mum worked at the Foreign Trade Ministry, and she said, well, MEFI has their exams starting on the 1st of July, on the 1st of August, but MGIMO has their exams starting 1st July. So you'll be safer if you first take the exams at MGIMO. And I took the history and the English exams, and I got the highest mark. And when I came to school, I looked at my friends who were very nervous and very agitated because of the exams, and I decided that I would enter MGIMO University, and went with it. So it was almost a coincidence. And you wrote a very inspiring anthem. Well, yes. Now the next question. A question from the young man here. Mr. Lavrov, my name is Georgi. I'm from North Ossetia, and I also a member of the youth parliament in our republic. What opportunities do you think would be most promising for young people from our republic? Well, young people have lots of opportunities, and I don't really understand if you want to hear about what you can do if you want to be part of the diplomatic corps. Well, yes. So what would you give them as a word of advice? What should they try? What should they avoid? Well, you should try anything you can, but it's really difficult to give a general kind of advice because every person is unique. So self-education and self-improvement comes in various forms, and what helps one person will not help someone else. But of course, various universities have international relations departments, and MGIMO is just one of them. So if you're interested in international cooperation, it's not necessarily foreign policy and international affairs and the government level. You can also be part of the economic foreign relations. It can be a part of a foreign trade. So certainly you must look at the specific programs available to you and think about what you want. Now we have a question in the central sector over here. Mr. Lavrov, my name is Snezhana. I'm a political science student. I'm over here. Yes, I see you. Now, I'm studying in the State Governance Institute, Moscow. You once said that after Gandhi died, there are no people left in the international arena that you could really talk to. Now, is there a person in the world today who you could talk with, could have a dialogue with? Well, do you mean despite the a so-called isolation, or in terms of a reasonable people being there? Yes and yes. Well, the president said that, and he said that phrase at a time when it was already clear what kind of global strategic goals the West is pursuing in its relations with Russia. But the president has many interlocutors. He has many people to talk with. He has international conversations every day. And, of course, Belarus and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea is just some of them. There's also China, where we have an unprecedented level of trusted strategic relations. And Chinese President Xi Jinping visited visited our country during the celebration of the anniversary of victory, and then our president went to China to celebrate the defeat of Japanese militarism that same year. And it was very important to preserve historical memory and prevent the attempts to eliminate the memory of a history that we're seeing now. It's really a long list of leaders who work with our president regularly at BRICS, at the SCO, and in the post-Soviet space, and I never turn down any proposals to talk. But I don't impose myself on anyone. I regularly meet with the Foreign Minister of Hungary, of Slovakia, of Switzerland. He often offers contacts, and I never turn that down. The former Foreign Minister of Austria, Alexander Schallenberg, is also an example. He asked me for a meeting at an international event, though he hesitated to do it on camera, but we did it while we had a smoke. So neither our president or myself ever turned down a proposal to talk and to have a dialogue. And there's no meaning in avoiding anyone either. And if someone tries to boycott you, going out of the hall when you speak, let them do it. Let them get it out of the system. But then when they come back and when they want to talk with us once again, we will know what their word is actually worth. We know that a word said is a lie, as the saying goes. But with them, every word is a lie. We saw that during the Ukrainian coup d'etat, during the Minsk talks, when Yanukovych and the leader of the opposition made an agreement to prepare for the elections in France, Germany, also confirmed that treaty. But then they started what they started. So in April 2022, soon before the special military operation started, we had talks in Istanbul, and our negotiating team agreed to the principles of a settlement proposed by the Ukrainian delegation. But the Ukrainians then heard from their mentors that they didn't yet sacrifice enough of their people. So now, when they come around and when they suggest a settlement, we will take a very close look and think very hard about what we can agree to.
Young man in the red, so please introduce yourself and what is your question? Yes, they represent political parties. Stanislav Bajenov from the Communist Youth. After the events of the past, we can see the crisis of international institutions, of communication, of law enforcement. They don't So countries stop participating in those institutions because they don't trust them. Do we need new infrastructure? Do we need new institutions? And if yes, then what? Well, in my remarks, I've mentioned that, of course, the United Nations organization is going through dire straits, and it is caused by the actions of the West that wants to privatize. Basically, it has already privatized the Secretariat, the Secretary General, Deputy on the political matters, the Deputy on peacemaking operations, Deputy on humanitarian matters, and Deputy on ensuring security of the UN infrastructure across the world. All these people are people from the NATO countries. And there is this report that is called UN 80. I will not cite any examples from this document, but the gist of this document is to limit the possibility for the United Nations members to have any influence on its operations or on its secretariat, and to expand the capabilities of the secretariat that previously was a matter of the intergovernmental agreements. And the excuse is very simple. It's taking too much time now and we need to act fast. It's another Western policy that is using its people in the Secretariat, is promoting the decisions that are profitable, beneficial for it. The Council of Europe is going through very deep crisis, and we have left it because it focuses all its efforts instead of developing a universal legal framework for cooperation in the field of humanitarian cooperation. It is now focused on establishing some tribunals against Russia or a commission to calculate damage inflicted on Ukraine, which is very sad. It used to be a very good organization. OSCE is going through also deep crisis because the Secretary Generals, currently a national of Turkey, is a Secretary General, a former diplomat, and he's trying to work within the limits of the authority of Secretary General. But before him, there were people holding this office who were blatantly abusing their authority, and they did not fulfill the charter of the OSCE, and the countries that were chairing over the organization behaved in the similar manner. Now chairing country is Finland. We are celebrating the Finland Acts anniversary that was signed in 1975, so which laid the groundwork for the establishment of the OSCE. So it's also a very difficult country to preside over. But I mentioned the countries and the organizations that are based on the principle of equality: BRICS, SCO, STO, Eurasian Economic Union. Our relations with our counterparts from Africa are also carried out in the same nature. We are going to hold the second ministerial forum, Russia-Africa. And we are going to hold the very first Russia-Arab World Summit this year as well. So these are the formats where that we believe to be comfortable for us and for our partners. And there is another platform apart from the UN where we sit at the same table with the representatives of the West. I'm speaking about the Group of 20, that includes the Group of 7 and expanded BRICS and like-minded countries. And if we look at the composition of this group, so it's G7 plus their like-minded countries and BRICS plus like-minded countries. So G20 is divided basically equally, 10 against 10. And so there is this principle of need to compromise, and you cannot bypass it. And this is the platform where we can try to put some sense into the members of the Western community, and that's what we're trying to do. And there were attempts to Ukrainize the G20 agenda, but they failed, and everyone said that G20 was established not to consider political matters. So if you have some political matters, so you have the UN Security Council, that's where you discuss these matters. So we still believe that the UN is an essential component of the global infrastructure. If you read the UN Charter, it does not require any changes, any adjustments. If we want to follow the concept of multipolarity, we don't need to change anything. So because there is sovereign equality of the states, there is equality and self-determination of the people's principles. Territorial integrity is also in there, but later the UN General Assembly explained that one needs to respect the territorial integrity of every state, where the government respects their nation's right for self-determination and thus represents the entire population inhabiting its territory. But how can we speak about this after a coup d'etat in 2014? Did they represent the interests of the people of Crimea, of Novorossiya, of Donbass? So these documents, they have everything that we need for multipolarity. And if the West recognized Kosovo's independence without any referendums, just using this self-determination principle, but when we held a referendum in Crimea 6 years later, when Ukrainians sent armed thugs to seize the parliament building in Simferopol, the West said, no, this is not self-determination principle. This is when we use the territorial integrity principle. So we used to have this proverb that you can bend the law any way you want. That's what they follow now. So the charter must be followed. It must be adhered to, not when you want it, but at all times, in its entirety, in all its interconnectedness. So we will continue to work, and there is a lot of resistance towards this. Minister Lavrov, thank you very much, friends. Unfortunately, we are running out of time. Thank you very much for your questions. Unfortunately, we have time only for the final question. And what time is it now? It's 12:46. Well, we have time until 1 p.m. Thank you so much. We have a unique opportunity. So we have a young man in yellow shirt. He was raising his hand. Now you're standing up. Good afternoon. Minister Lavrov, thank you so much for your speech. My name is Anton. I'm from the cultural capital, from St. Petersburg. I'm majoring in international relations, and I'm also interested in the global south. And here is my question. What is your assessment of Russia's role in forming the new architecture of global security, and how can we make it to ensure that interests of our homeland are taken into consideration? Well, I believe that I already answered this question, but well, those organizations that we believe to be, that still maintain some sense in their existence, so these organizations must strive to preserve the principles that they were founded on. I've just mentioned the UN, and there is a lot of attacks against its procedures, against its charter, and we have a lot of allies. 3 years ago, we established at the Venezuela's initiative a group of friends to protect the UN Charter, and this group makes statements regularly. So now it comprises 25 countries, and there are more countries that would like to join this format. So they adopt statements several times a year on some matters of principle, and just recently they adopted a statement, and after that, based on this statement, we also managed to launch a resolution at the UN to stop modern colonial practices. It's a very important matter. So you might think, so it's a matter of the distant past, because in the 1950s and 1960s, Africa gained its independence, but it inherited colonial borders that colonial powers were drawing without any consideration for the ethnic groups that are residing in Africa. And that's why there are still armed clashes on the continent that are caused by these borders, like it happened 30 years ago between Burundi and Rwanda, like it's happening now between Mali and Algeria. So the people, the ethnic group of Tuaregs, they are living on the both sides of the border. And of course, there are some contradictions, some differences caused by that. But the most important thing that after gaining political independence and after inheriting these territorial problems, the African Union does not want to change the borders. And rightfully so. They just need to reach a compromise somehow. But the most important thing that Africa did not gain economic independence. I've been there on business trips. For example, I visited South Africa, and all of a sudden, when the special military operations started, we faced difficulties with refueling our plane because the company that was in charge of that was owned by British or by the Americans, so we somehow managed to agree to refuel our plane at the military base. And of course, our South African friends would have done everything needed for that, but it's a telltale sign. For example, they held a G20 event or BRICS event. So when they hold these international events, they cannot guarantee to the participants that they invited to this summit that all the technical or logistic matters would be resolved. And this is why, of course, now there is this second wave of African resurgence, one might say, now in terms of economic matters. And we have made great progress in our relations with Africa. We held 2 Russia-Africa summits in 2019, 2023, so we are now preparing for the 3rd Russia-Africa summit, and last year we held the first ministerial foreign ministers meeting in the Russia-Africa format, and we are preparing for the second one. So we need to keep the universal UN institutions and demand from everyone to respect its principles, and at the same time we need to develop our own centers of the future multipolar world. I mean, SCO and CIS and CSTO and Eurasian Economic Union, all the organizations in Eurasia, and BRICS as well. It's a very strong organization, and if the West will not be one of the major centers of this new world, if they only try to preserve their hegemony, they will fail. Thank you very much. Great question. I see a young lady wearing a green blouse just right next to you. My dear volunteer, what is your question? Minister Lavrov, my name is Veronika Vasin. I represent the New People Party. You are very humane diplomat, so sometimes you can use very strong words to express your position. That's why we like you so much. And the question is, how do you manage to maintain these humane qualities considering the conservative circumstances that you have to operate in?
Well, I never expected that using strong words could be seen as a sign of weakness, but if anybody's... it's not a... I wouldn't say it's a weakness of... I would say it's a trait of character. Now, there is not a single profession where you could live without humor. And diplomacy, I think, especially so. And you often have opportunities to make a joke, or maybe to tease your partner lightheartedly if you're friends. And it's a very positive thing. And when the president talks with his counterparts, he has a very good sense. And he feels, and the people that he talks with are very well. And of course, it's something you need in diplomacy. And you also have to practice this kind of intuition. But in many respects, it's something you're born with. suppose there were some stories when a bully came out when we were playing in the street as kids. It's something that the West is now doing, by the way. The kids are playing on the playground, but now the bully has to come and spoil the fun for everyone. So, and I had a way of dealing with them. Now we have the last question from a young man with the badge here. My name is Daniel. I'm from Kazan, Tatarstan. Now, we all know the power of your speech influencing diplomats and countries. But could you please tell us what did you say during the BRICS summit in Kazan when somebody stepped on your foot? We won't tell anyone. Well, there have been many speculations about that. A beautiful woman went along and she stepped on my foot, and I thought that she was hitting on me, and I said that it's time to go have a smoke. And I think we promised a photo to the young girl. Yes, and all the preparations will be made. Now, and thank you very much. And I don't want to make compliments to myself, but when you're being listened to, like I am now, and when you have such a captive audience, it truly inspires and gives you energy to work. That was Minister Lavrov, under territory of Minsk. Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov. Thank you. More applause.